where have you been? Hello and welcome back to another episode of Podular Modcast. My name is Tim Held, and this week we're going to check out a bunch of really cool synth gear. I've got some really exciting news to share. We're going to do an extended featured artist segment, and we're going to talk about why the heck there hasn't been a PodMod episode for over a month. Let's get into it. I'd like to thank a brand new sponsor for this month of PodMod, and that is the new modular company Ampersand. They have recently released their new module, the Wear and Tear, which is super cool. Why don't we just check out a little jam that I did with my guitar through it to give you a little sense of what it sounds like. Okay, so why hasn't there been a PodMod for a while? I don't have a good answer for that question, nor was it intentional to go a month without an episode. I would have liked to have told you that we were going to be taking a break, but I didn't know, and it certainly didn't feel like a break. So I've been looking for work, I've been kind of doing odd jobs here and there, and I've also been helping out with family stuff with my grandmother and my mother. Then, on top of it all, one of my best friends has cancer and is going through treatment currently. So if you've been listening to the show for a while, you definitely have heard me bring up my friend David Lutz, aka Lousy Falcon. He's one of the 3 people who I credit with introducing me to modular synthesis and getting me into it. David and I have been collaborators over the last 8 years. We have scored some short films together. I also make him keep any set that he plays live patched up until I can get him over to my place and record it in my studio before he takes it apart. And then I mix and master those for him. And a couple days before Christmas last year, he was diagnosed with cancer. And as we all know, cancer sucks. The treatment for cancer really sucks. So in the midst of being behind on podcast stuff and, just trying to find my own work, David needed some assistance because his partner had to leave town for a week. right after one of his chemo treatments. And I thought to myself, hey, I can just bring my stuff up and work from your kitchen table. That's no problem. But I didn't learn my lesson from last summer when I would go stay with my mom and help out with her. And this is not her fault and it's not David's fault, but I don't get as much stuff done when I'm not in my studio. So yeah, that was just another bump in the road and setback as far as me getting an episode out. And this brings me to something that I haven't talked about in a while, and that is mental health. Talking about mental health has been a huge part of PodMod, and definitely the episodes where we get into it with a guest and we really have a guest who's really vulnerable and shares a lot about some of their struggles. Those are always the episodes that, resonate the most with people, or at least I hear back from most people on that. Doing this for 6 years, I, can get in my head and do I really, do I need to overshare? Do they need to know everything that's going on? Do I really need to be whining to people? And this getting in my head made me lose sight of one of the core reasons I wanted to start a podcast at the beginning of PodMod, and that is to be a place that talks about mental health, because I know how much I've benefited from hearing artists talk about their struggles and whatnot. So I've been on antidepressants for the last 3 years, and they've actually been extraordinarily helpful. I still can get depressed, but when I do, it is, circumstantial. It has a reason I can point to. Well, of course I'm depressed. My mom almost died in the hospital, or my grandma's, got dementia, and that just doesn't get better. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And I just recently discovered that therein is a delineation for me about what and when I'll talk about mental health. I used to talk about it because I was like, hey, this is just what my brain does. Things can be great on paper and I can still feel this way. But yeah, when it's situational, I just don't feel like it's the right venue to unload all my personal problems. But depression is depression, and feeling bummed out or overwhelmed is what it is. And I've been feeling that way for the last probably 6 months to a year, for myriad reasons. My mother's health, my grandmother's declining health, my friends getting cancer, 3 friends all in a span of a few months got cancer, one of which died on Christmas Day. Yeah, it's just been a lot of heavy stuff. I found that dead guy by the park. I think I shared that on the show. It was just all this stuff was kind of happening around the same time, and I just got into a real funk. But luckily, I do feel like I am starting to come out of the valley, but I just wanted to share with you. That's why there hasn't been a show for a while. And then aside from all of, the family and friends and just personal life stuff, I've been having a lot of conflicting thoughts about what, how viable of a career choice is trying to do a podcast about modular synthesis. And unfortunately, I've come to the conclusion that at least the way that I do it and my abilities, I don't think that's going to happen. Not just because of my abilities or lack thereof or whatever. I think also it's a changing landscape. There's a lot of podcasts. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but it seems like everything in our society is just aimed at selling stuff to people who are on their phones or the computer, and people making themselves into their own brand. Who would want to do that? I'm having existential ennui about this. But I want to talk more about it, but it's still nebulous in my head and it's floating around. But I do want to keep doing PodMod. I still obviously want to be an artist. But yeah, I just don't think that a podcast about modular synthesis is a viable business plan. But if you're out there and you're listening and you're thinking to yourself, no, I think it is, Tim, well, then you can head over to Patreon, which, by the way, has been it's half of what it used to be. And I think that's just the way that it's been going with Patreon overall. Not because of Patreon, but because of what I was just talking about with the inundation of so many different content creators out there. We're all asking for your generous donations because that's how we make this content. but also I'm not great at having exclusive content on the Patreon. But because Patreon is a monthly subscription thing, and I think that, turns a lot of people away, I am going to step up my digital panhandling, which is one of my favorite things to do. And I'm going to put my PayPal and Venmo information up. So the PayPal address is podmodcast@gmail.com. Not Podular, just podmodcast. And then my Venmo is podmodtim. No spaces, capital P, capital M, capital T, podmodtim. So yeah, if you want to do a one-time donation, I would greatly appreciate it. And then, of course, alternatively, you could head over to my Bandcamp page and buy music from me if you want something for your money. Okay, luckily, the exciting news does have to do with my friend David Lutz. And that news is we finally have a David Lutz, aka Lousy Falcon album, released on the Podular Modcast Bandcamp page, podularmodcast.bandcamp.com. If I can keep things going and release friends' music, and maybe even occasionally some listeners' music on a digital label, then that's what I'd like to do. But you know how I am. Sometimes I get ideas and then don't follow through on them. Thank you, ADD. But I am so excited and honored to have helped make this record possible. I've been wanting a Lousy Falcon record since before I started the podcast, and now we finally have one. It's only taken 6.5 years. The first 2 tracks are from 2 different performances that David did in Seattle. One was at the Lousy Lights Festival a couple years back, and the other one was actually from the most recent Velocity, Seattle, in 2022. And then the last track was actually something that we tried to jam together on, and I ended up just erasing all of my tracks because what David did was really good, and I thought it would make a nice third piece for this record. If you head over to podularmodcast.bandcamp.com, you can get 48 Feathers, a collection of live performances by Lousy Falcon. And because we released this on David's birthday, I wanted to be a nice friend and make him a music video as a birthday present. And that took me way longer than I thought it was going to. But I did finish it, so he got a late birthday present. So why don't we check out this video that I did for his Velocity track from the 48 Feathers album, out now on podularmodcast.bandcamp.com. All right, let's check out the track Secret of the Sunrise off of the album Bandana from Hood River, Oregon's Hank Gurdjieff. I love that name, Hank Gurdjieff. Nice. And for those of you watching, the video behind the track is just a bunch of shots that I took at Naked Falls on the Washougal River down in Oregon. So I figured it's an Oregon-based artist. I might as well use some Oregon footage. So let's check out Hank Gurdjieff's Secret of the Sunrise. Please pardon the interruption. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about how much the circuit tracks from Novation has made my approach to creating in my studio so much easier. In this video, I'm using all 4 drum tracks and both synth tracks on the Novation. I'm using its sync output to clock the 4MS sampler, which has a little hi-hat beat on it. And then I'm using the end of sample output on the sampler to trigger the chicane from knobula, which is acting as a bass drum, but also as a sidechain compressor for the pianophonic, also from knobula. I've got that running into the Mojave from Qubit and then into the chicane. And I'm actually controlling the gate and the pitch on the pianophonic from one of the 2 MIDI channels on the circuit tracks. I'm gonna break down how I made this patch on next week's episode, but I can't stand it anymore. I gotta go play some drums. Now let's check out a track called Primordial Wound off of the album called Primordial Wound by Ara Cristina Hernandez from Austin, Texas. And the footage behind this video is of a raccoon that startled me while I was at the beach the other day. It jumped out of a trash can and then just started eating the trash, and it was pretty adorable. And so I decided to film a bunch of it. So enjoy. Let's check out a featured artist track. This one is from Frank Martin from San Francisco. Okay, forgive me, all of my French-speaking listeners. I'm going to try. Je me souviens, Part 3. That was, I feel like an idiot, but I hope I was close. Off of the album called Je me souviens. I hope I did that right, Frank. right, that's our episode. Thank you so much for your patience, and thank you for coming back to Podular Modcast. Don't forget, the new Lousy Falcon album is out on the PodMod Bandcamp, link in the show description. Thank you to this week's featured artists. Links to all of their great stuff in the show description. If you would like to be a featured artist, then email me a WAV file and the cover art for your album, and we'll make that happen. If you would like to support Podular Modcast, you can do so on patreon.com, PayPal, or Venmo. Links to all down below. Thanks to this week's sponsors, knobula, &&. Congrats on releasing your first module. It's super cool. Bastel, 4MS, Expert Sleepers, Novation, and Signal Sounds. This week's secret word is postcard, because my friend who lives in Estonia sent me this really cool postcard. Until next week.